Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Human in Me. This is going to be part two of what we did last week. So we wanted to add on to what we did last week.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so welcome again, and I hope you guys had a great week. And I hope you also had an awesome week yourself.
Yes, man.
Because for me this week was there was a lot of work that needed to be done.
A hectic week.
It was a hectic week. I had a lot of submissions to do. I had a test to prepare for and all that stuff.
Whoa.
But yeah, at least we've recovered and getting ready for the next week. So okay. So if you guys remember, last week we talked about the manifestation of what do you call this thing? Approval seeking behaviors. So what we touched on last week was this whole thing that when you are still young, you find yourself in a situation where your parents never, or maybe your guardians, the people that you stay with, they never see anything right with what you do. So they are always pointing out the bad in everything. Even though you do good, they will always have that one particular thing that they will tell you that you didn't do right. So that in itself sets you up for the need to always try to do things by the book, by their book, not your book, obviously.
That's
do
true.
things by their book. So as time goes on, obviously that gets you in a point where you start doing things just to have people recognize that you did them. You did something, and then you look at the person sitting next to you, to see if they can see what you just did. So you get trapped into this whole thing of constantly seeking the approval of others for you to move forward. So today we are going to focus on how that limits you in terms of the power that you have over yourself. Because with regards to everything that you do, you're always dependent on what the next person is going to say, and then there are certain situations where you even avoid getting into arguments or disagreements with other people because there's that need to be liked by people. So you end up not saying anything at all just to keep the peace.
That's true.
So that's what we wanted to touch on. And before we go into that, I am going to continue with using the book that I've been reading as an example, the same way that I did last week. So apparently everything that we talked about when we were doing the last episode is happening as we could have predicted in a way, like the approval seeking behaviors are manifesting themselves in such a way that she has found herself in positions where she's constantly trying to help people, trying to do nice things for people without realizing again that she stretches herself too thin, in an attempt to do that. So what happened in the book is that I did tell you that she moved to another place after being kicked out of the convent. So she was staying in a boarding house, right? So in that boarding house that she was staying in, like it's the same thing that you did last semester. Like it's you and there are other people living under the same roof. Yeah, so they were basically doing the living like that. So what happened now is that there came this other guy. He said that his name was Steve. So Steve got into the picture, and then Steve made his way into the girl's life. And he kept on lying that he's still looking for a job. He lied that he went to Yale University, Stanford University, and he studied something related to business, right? And then he kept on getting calls on a daily basis. And that in itself kind of assured everyone that he was, basically doing something with his life. And, the guy was a convict. He's been arrested for many cases of fraud. So his one and only mission is to seek out women, vulnerable women, and then he sucks them dry of their money, and then he disappears. So he changed the names 3 times just to hide his identity. So obviously it worked for a time. And then what happened now is that it got to a point where he couldn't pay for his rent. So the chick, her name is Gabriela. So Gabriela ended up having to pay on his behalf, because she was still she was in love. They ended up falling in love. Yeah. Wow. So apparently the sex was great. So she kind of got fooled by her. So she fell into the trap of the good sex, and then she forgot why she was living there, why she was going to work on all that stuff. So, okay, yeah, sharp. So it continued the whole thing, and then now she finds herself in a position where she's even buying food for the guy.
Wow. Okay.
And then it got to a point where the guy starts stealing her money from her handbag. And then every time she approaches him, what he does now is to make her feel guilty for doing that. And because she's trying to be this nice person, it causes her, cognitive dissonance. And now what she does is that the thing that she complained about initially, she ends up putting it aside, and then now concentrating on, continuing being the nice person. So unfortunately, it got to a point where there was this old man that they were staying with who later realized that the guy was a fraud, and then he tried to get her to be aware of that. But for some reason, Steve they had a fight, and then Steve pushed him, and then he tripped, and then he fell, he hit his head against something, and then it was game over for him. He went to the hospital, survived for a couple of days, and then he died. And then afterwards, she realized that, something was happening with the guy. And she ended up confronting him, and then he beat the shit out of her again.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, bruh. It's fucked up the way things happen. So she got reminded about...
This is probably going to get more attached to him.
Dude. No, at least he beat her to a point that she didn't want anything to do with the guy anymore.
Okay, that's
which is a beautiful thing. I like the fact that she got to a point where she realized that the whole relationship wasn't worth it. But obviously, I'm not done reading the book. So adding on to what I just said with regards to the book and the girl trying so hard to be the nice person, trying to seek the approval of others. There's this other book that I once read by Marcus Aurelius. It's called Meditation. I'm sure you know the book, right? Meditation. So there's this part where he talks about, this whole thing of people seeking the approval of others, and how in the process of doing that you lose power in a way, because your happiness is going to depend on how much people approve of what you put onto the table. And that in itself takes away the power away from you. And you find yourself in a position where, you are constantly trying to, so you trying to compensate for the things that you feel like are your weaknesses. I'm like you. I don't know if you've realized this thing, but even in relationships, there's that very same problem that happens where people try to be everything to their partner. Right? You try so hard to be everything to your partner, which is basically what I said last week, that it's physically impossible for you to be everything to the person that you're dating, so you need to make peace with it, because it's never going to happen. When your person says that they want to go clubbing, that you're not a person who likes to go clubbing, but because you want to, come across as the nice boyfriend, the understanding boyfriend, the fun boyfriend, you end up, agreeing to all those things, even though you know that those are not the things that you want to do. And that's not the only case, obviously, because there's a lot of these cases where, even women do the same thing, where, okay, no, I can only give this thing from a man's perspective, because even I've found myself in such situations where I try to cover all the grounds that I can, just to appear as the fun boyfriend, the nice boyfriend, and all that stuff. So obviously I came to the realization that this was not sustainable. So I had to stop.
Stretch yourself too thin.
Yeah, you stretch yourself too thin, trying to be that people pleaser. You don't even realize that you spend so much of your time doing things for people instead of spending some of that time doing things for yourself. And that's just how we, get disconnected from ourselves and disconnected from the things that we like. So
yeah,
it's crazy, bro. It's crazy.
When I thought about this point, I wanted to express first. It reminded me of the DSM-5, and when we were still studying psychology,
Yeah.
yeah, and like with every condition, right? It becomes um s- a, 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 a problem, or the one of the biggest criterias of the diagnosis is that it deters with normal functioning,
Yeah.
basically in daily living, right? And basically, the point I wanted to express was that the approval-seeking behavior may be okay because we're all human, right?
Yeah.
But the determining factor that can distinguish whether or not you should evaluate yourself is whether or not the approval seeking behavior tampers or interferes with the satisfaction of your needs as a person. Whether
Exact.
it's emotional, whether it's
Exact.
financial, whether it's relationship needs, the goals you want to achieve for yourself, and what you want in life, right? Now, when the approval seeking affects that, that's when you're losing a lifetime,
Yeah.
because that's literally giving your life away, right? And one point you also mentioned that I also wanted to touch on was the fact that you give away your power to other people, right?
The unfortunate part.
And to some people, it might bring out the need to manipulate people, because everybody who's like, everybody's been made to feel insecure
Yeah.
at some point in their life, right? And if they're not an adult enough, right, they might not be able to resist the urge, right? It's kind of like what happens when people get money and power, right? They have options, and they might not resist the need, the urge to, take it out on someone else, right? So basically, it's either you're going to repel people by the responsibility you give to them, of them being your approval giver, because that's a big role. Some people just want a relationship with you and not have to be a mom who gives you the rules and tells you what to do and what not to do. But then for a different person, like the guy you mentioned in the relationship, they may see that they may be, more predatory in nature,
Yeah.
and they may want to, take advantage of that, use that to, make you pay their rent, make you give you their money.
Yo, bruh.
So it's very important that you're, always aware of your emotional state, right? And basically, the one that I'm reminded, the point I'm reminded from the book On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, is the fact that the more approval seeking you do, right, the more you lose your needs, right? And basically, approval seeking puts you at a risk for losing yourself as an individual, right? And basically, individualization is becoming an adult, right? It's becoming your own person. The more you care about other people, the more you lose your identity and, your sense of self, right? The less responsible you feel.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, it's like you're literally losing a lifetime, because if you can't, collect yourself as a person, then you can't direct yourself. You can't be on your purpose, which is the most popular, phrase out there today. It's
Yeah.
be on your purpose, be on your grind, for both men and women, for
Mm.
everything, and it's more entrepreneurial. But then it's there's a whole be on your purpose trend where you're going out and reaching your dreams, right? And basically, if you are approval seeking, right? It's kind of like what happens to children when they approval seeking, right? When they don't, as they grow up, right, and they don't express their needs, because when they were growing as a child, right, they associated their needs with being insignificant, because when they cried, right, they didn't get a response, right? So with approval seeking, you care more about the needs of other people, that it internally you literally reject your own needs and put them as insignificant to those of others, right? And when you do that, then you leave no room to be selfish, right? It reminds me of the book The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, right? Basically, you give your fucks too much, that basically you don't have time to care about yourself, basically, and what you want, right? Because you're basically trying to get the approval of other people
Yep.
by certain, other types of behaviors, right? And then the biggest one, which is like the biggest downside, I think, of everything, is that when you approval seek, right, it's also linked to that identity you're losing for yourself. But basically, One example is this one guy, right? Author of a book, Alan Roger Curry, talks about how um, men are shocked by the true nature of women, right? Which is a big thing that's coming up on online and on YouTube communities. Women are shocked by the nature of women because even women are shocked, and men are shocked by the nature of women because they didn't have time to express their nature because they were busy um, following the social programming, right? That makes them not be able to understand themselves, right? Which is why their advice is so confusing, but they know it within themselves what they want, right? So basically, when you approval seek, right, the biggest danger is that it may create loneliness within yourself because you literally form a social mask, right? A social mask that's gonna be. It's kind of like
What are you doing?
that's
You
true.
do form
That's
a
true.
social mask.
It's kind of like there's this book Alan Roger Curry, right, wrote about. It's called Mode One, and he talks about being verbally direct with women and expressing your needs from them from the get go and not being manipulative, right? So he talks about how mostly the reason why you don't literally tell the woman directly that you find her attractive and you want to take her out, the reason why you don't say that is the fear of rejection that you talked about before the podcast, but also you want to maintain, you want to save face within yourself, right? This is kind of like approval seeking. You want to be seen as a certain person, right? You want to keep that gentleman reputation within yourself, so you don't say things directly, right? You go
Okay,
indirect.
that one depends on the environment you find yourself in. Cause
That's
I
true.
know back where I come from. Niggas don't give a fuck. They do say what they wanna say.
That's
Obviously not in a demeaning way or some
Mhm.
shit like that, but it's just that thing
Yeah.
that they do tell you when they think that you are attractive. Like they're
That's
just not
true. Yeah.
afraid to say
That,
anything. That's why I'm saying like
yeah.
context.
Yeah. That's. But basically,
Because
I'm
I'm
trying
pretty
to.
much sure
I'm
he
trying
wrote
to.
that book in
Yeah. I'm
terms
trying.
of
I'm
the American. No, I don't
okay.
disagree with you.
I'm trying to
I
use
was
that.
just
I'm
adding.
trying to use that as an example of what happens in the instances when you can't express yourself because you're trying to be seen as something else, right?
Hmm.
Which is the part of the approval you're trying to
I
gain.
never thought of it that way.
Yeah. So basically, when you
Damn.
do that, right, you literally, I'd say, I'd say, approval seeking behavior, right? Uh, Basically, it literally leads to, may lead to, the creation of a persona that is not in correlation within yourself, right? With yourself, right? And that creates authenticity, right? That's what makes you, it makes you two-faced, right?
Okay, my point. Would I be right when I okay? Obviously, I think this is what you said. When you say that, when you get to a point where you start creating a persona for yourself, you start to become manipulative.
That's true,
Is
exactly.
that's what you said?
That's
Okay.
literally what I'm trying to get to. You
Okay.
become manipulative, and within that, it creates a level of loneliness, right? It's like you don't have intimacy within
Hmm.
relationships.
Now it makes sense. Now
So
it makes sense.
that
Okay.
loneliness, right? Literally, it's like that loneliness. The dangerous part about it is that people can't handle being alone and being bored most of the time. Most people, right? And that loneliness doesn't just exist when you're alone, right? It exists even amongst people, right? So basically, you feel alone even though you have a bunch of friends and everybody around you, right?
Hey, this thing, went way too deep than I expected. like, like now that you're mentioning all this thing,
Yeah,
I come to
like
realize
this.
all the shit that I've seen people do.
Exactly.
Saying that they feel lonely even in the presence of other people,
Hmm.
and obviously, it just didn't make sense to me why you would feel lonely in the presence of people. But now that you're mentioning all this stuff, it makes sense why
Yeah,
that would be the case because you're not your authentic self when you are
exactly.
with people. So you never get to express who you are, but you are basically expressing what you want people to see so that they can like you.
Exactly.
It's kind of
And the
fucked up.
worst part is like when you don't recognize it and you think that your persona is who you are,
Mm.
but then you know that like who you are inside is kind of dying, right? And so you try and push the real you away,
Shit.
and that's basically what I think
This is danger, bro.
leads to depression because you're literally trying to hide your real self from the who
Hey,
you
let's
are.
stick
Right?
with loneliness. Depression is
Right?
too extreme.
Yeah. No, no, no. I'm just saying, that's the dangers
It's
of,
too
approval
extreme.
seeking on an extreme level.
Yeah.
Right? And on an even like deeper extreme is when people just go, psycho out of a blue, right? And you don't see it.
Mm.
Kind of like the kids who shoot up schools, right?
Yeah.
Like, this kid was okay yesterday. He mastered social programming and
Yeah.
his pragmatics is proper. But then, all of a sudden he just shoots up, people
Yeah,
in his
some
school.
American
and you're
shit.
like, exactly.
That's why I always tell people to never dream about going to America. America is fucked up, man.
Dude, why would you say that on a podcast? Oh, dude, come on, bro.
Dude, there are a lot of things that
No,
are happening
this-
in America that are just fucked up.
This bit has to be
It's
cut
true.
out. Dude, you can't say that, bro.
But it's true, bro. What do you mean I can't say that?
Dude, but
America is fucked up. That's why all the shootings are happening. Have you
Dude,
ever
come
seen
on,
anyone
bro. How
shooting
can you
people in
say
South
that?
Africa?
okay, let's just stick to social approval and not shootings. But that's basically what happens at an extreme point. So it's very important that you get conscious of the mask you put on, right?
So
Robert-
how do you go about being conscious?
It's basically recognizing the needs within yourself, which is why I said that it becomes a big problem when the social the approval seeking behavior affects your needs as a person and
Okay.
them being satisfied, right? Because sometimes in order to approve, be approved socially, right? Some people may require that you give yourself up and sacrifice your own happiness for
That's
theirs,
true.
right?
Yeah.
And when you start to do that, then that's when the problem comes. But basically, with the mask, if you're more conscious of it, right, which is what Robert Greene suggests in his book, the what do you call it, the laws of human nature, right, is that we all know that being authentic, completely authentic, would lead you into deep trouble in this world, right? It's not the smartest thing to do. But then, if you're conscious of the persona you put on, and then you put on it like a mask, like an actor who goes out to act, right? Then you can literally get that to correlate with your needs, right? Because you can recognize that this is how I act socially. This is who I am and what I want, right? And then you can begin to incorporate those two, right? That's when you become a courtier, right? And then you get to play the game of life on a more, you get to make yourself more happy and be more, responsible for your own happiness. Because I think, and with most of the beliefs that are going around, right? This
Which
is what
beliefs?
the popular belief that something else is going to make you happy. When you get something else is going to make you happy, right? Now, with that belief, as long as you have that kind of belief, it perpetuates the idea of you approval seeking, because you're trying to, get the approval of that thing that's going to make you happy. And with that, it like literally puts you in a position where you're going to go deeper and deeper,
And
it's
you
only
lose
a matter
control.
of time before things go really badly.
Oh, okay. So we're not saying that people shouldn't buy the things that they want to buy. You can do all that stuff.
As long as as long as you're in tune with what you need, and you're true to yourself, basically. As long as you keep being honest with yourself and do what you enjoy and find out what you do it for. But beyond that,
Damn.
no, I think. Oh man, I think I just I just gave
No,
the host
I-
too many things
I-
to think about.
Yeah, dude. Like I realized I wasn't gonna look at it that way because miss, I like to keep things simple. So when you mentioned all those things, that's when I realized that okay, this shit is far more deeper than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And it actually is. So here's the thing that we wanted you to get from this. Like we said last week, we focus on the origin or how those things manifest, but now we're focusing more on how that whole thing of you trying to be a people pleaser takes away the power from you, like the power that you have within yourself. It takes it away from you. So now you start to depend on external things more than you do depend on yourself, which is kind of fucked up, because now the thing that happens is that when people act like they don't see the good that you do, or when you do things for people and they don't respond the way you expect them to respond when you give them or do things for them, that also is going to affect you negatively,
That's true.
because you're gonna go
That's
back
true.
to that thing of you feeling unappreciated, blah blah blah. So it's kind of fucked up, because
Your ego
You're
is-
just gonna
Uh-huh.
experience a lot of disappointments,
Exactly.
which you cause for yourself.
Exactly.
Which you cause for yourself, because I mean, like, you expecting people to do shit for you is not, it's not. But obviously there are things that people are gonna do for you, but giving away your power, man, as a human being is just not something that you can afford. And sometimes you do find yourself getting your own shit, like getting yourself in trouble, because you don't want to appear to your friends as the black sheep, exactly, like a pussy. Okay, yeah. So you don't want to appear like that. So everything that they suggest, you end up going with it, even though you know deep down that this is not what I want to do. It doesn't even apply to friendships alone. It also applies to relationships, because you have to realize that some people are going to take advantage of the fact that they know that obviously they don't do it consciously. It's just the patterns they pick up subconsciously that get them to realize that, okay, so if I press this button, this person is going to behave this way. If I press that one, it's going to behave this way. So you find yourself in many relationships that are based around manipulation in itself. People are constantly manipulating each other to get what they want from each other,
Exactly.
which is kind of fucked up in itself.
I think-
So because the
Yeah.
thing that another thing that happened is that during the time when like, I'm going back to the book now, during the time when she was busy paying for rent, buying this guy food, this guy stealing her money, and all that stuff, right? She was trying so hard to avoid the whole thing of having to be labeled as a bad person, which was basically going to remind her of her mother, and that's not something that she wanted.
Sure.
So if even though she knew what was happening, it sometimes got to a point where if she wanted to approach the guy and tell him that, I know what you're doing, can you please stop doing that? She just couldn't, because she knew at the end of the day the guy is just gonna act all like a fucking victim, and make it look like because he's not working, this is what's going on, this is this is how she chooses to treat him and all that shit, right? So I don't know, like it was fucking sad. The book is not done. I'm still on chapter 22. So when I was reading that part, I was like, I've seen a lot of these things from other people, bruh, where you find people just wasting their lives, trying to be more than they could ever be to somebody else. That's why I'm always mentioning the whole thing about relationships, where you find, the guy or the chick stretching herself way too thin, trying to be everything. That's why I even discourage this whole thing of people being friendships in being friends in the context of a relationship, because I realize that we all have certain
friendships or relationships. So,
no, like, what I mean about friendships is that, so the thing that
context of a
happens, like,
romantic relationship.
exactly, of a romantic relationship,
Yeah.
you can have that, but obviously it needs to be regulated, because the thing that happens is that you try to be a boyfriend and a girlfriend at the same time. You find yourself going to spas with your, I'm not saying people shouldn't do that, but you find yourself going to spas with your chick, going for foot massages and all that shit. But at the very same time, that kind of relationship that you're building it's overclouding the romanticism that exists within the relationship itself. And then it gets to a point where you guys have become so much of friends that you can't even get aroused by looking at at your person. They take out they take out their bra, and nothing happens. You just like,
Because friendships are it's basically introducing because friendships are usually platonic, right?
exactly. So you don't want those things in a relationship.
So,
We
you
get
can't-
that sometimes
Yeah.
we try to be or please the people that we're dating, but I mean, like, just be the romantic partner to your person and just leave it at that. You can be a friend here and there and come back. If your person wants to have a friend, Emo, Sheba, you need to have your friends on the sides. On the side, both of you need to have friends on the side, because you need to outsource the
Not to
way,
mention,
bruh.
like you don't. It's like I think it's more of a laziness and an escapism in terms of you can't figure out a way to meet the same needs and do the same things from the realm of your current relationships, that you have to divert to, oh, the only way I know how to do this and get this done is with a friend, so we can just be friends and get those things satisfied as well. So it's kind of pushing to try to be everything instead of
Yeah.
fitting into the relationship you
Yeah.
have, which is what it is at the moment,
Mhm.
and not complicated by adding in
Dude,
too many
dude.
things within there.
And obviously, we're not saying that the friend relationships that in which people are friends don't work. They do work. There are people who can survive with that.
Yeah.
But for
They're
me
usually the
personally,
ones
I
that-
just wouldn't do that.
They're usually
I've,
the
I've,
ones
done, I've done it before. That's the thing. Like I've done it before, where I
Uh-huh.
find myself being a friend to the chick that I was dating, right? And it took away the romance from the relationship itself.
Polarity,
You know,
yeah.
it got to a point where, like, it just took everything that was romantic outside of the relationship. So now we were literally friends, even though we did have sex, but we were still, friends. And that it's only now that I realized that was kind of fucked up.
I spit fire, I've been eating chili. Your nigga knows every time he should meet me. I'm so happy all these girls wanna be me. I tell him like the weed if you wanna kick it. He said, girl, you slip, you know you bring the heat. You better bring it, I'm Mr. Delivery. And this is crazy, man, I wanna meet me. I sit deep blind, now they all wanna see me. They call me cocky, but watch me whip it out, son. My ego big, you the one Beyonce sing about. So y'all should bow and get coffee, this could take a while. Missy likes being queen, the crown to survive. Y'all should start saying your highness, I'll make it rain soon, so all hail me. No competition about that girl, Mother Nature. Your favorite artist, Luke, my nigga, I'm Darth Vader. Y'all should start saying your highness, I'll make it rain soon, so all hail me. No competition but that girl, Mother Nature. Your favorite artist, Luke, my nigga, I'm Darth Vader. Smoke weed? Now I always say hi, haters. I know they watching, I'm mad inspiring. Have you seen what I do when I'm writing? I swear it's shocking, man, I swear my bars are lining. I need to get more honey, soon I'll be buzzing. I keep them all on their toes, keep them running. I guess it's good for their health, I'm Herbalizing. I'm always high and they still wonder why I'm flying. You think it's easy to do this? I swear to me, man, life is a to-do list. Like check, checkmate, I am queen. Dreams don't come easy, so I don't sleep. Not on myself, man, I had to learn that. It ain't easy when the war is from inside, man. But I found solace in God and now my strength back. I grew my hair, stand tall and look like Samson.